to Brewing Success, where growth is the mission, change is the reward, and progress is the goal. I am your host, Andrea Gebhardt. I'm a former educator turned passionate entrepreneur whose desire to create impact has never wavered. I have spent the last decade teaching, mentoring, and coaching people on how to create success in their lives and businesses with proven strategies and systems that not only bring about change, but big results. When it comes down to it, teaching is my specialty, leadership is my jam, and inspiring you to live a bigger, fuller life is what I'm all about. This podcast will give you the knowledge and tools you need to brew success in almost any area of your life. You're going to walk away each week feeling inspired, motivated, and ready to step outside your comfort zone and into the next level of who you're meant to be. Now let's get into today's episode. I want to start today with something that you have probably said or thought or whispered to yourself in a quiet moment when the gap between who you are and who you intended to be felt a little too wide. And that thing that you've probably said to yourself is this: I know what I need to do. I just need to do it. Say it with me, because if you've ever been on a journey of building something, a business, a brand, a body of work, a life that actually reflects what you're capable of, you've almost certainly met with that sentence. And it sounds so simple when you say it, logical, obvious, and almost kind of like embarrassing in its plainness. I know what I need to do. I just need to do it. How many of us have found ourselves in that situation? We know what we need to do. We just need to do it. And yet here we are, because knowing has never been the problem, has it? You're not here because you lack information. You're here because somewhere between the knowing and the doing, something keeps interrupting. Something keeps shifting. Something keeps making the urgent feel more immediate than the important. And before you know it, another week has passed. And the thing that you said you were going to do consistently, it's still waiting. So today we're going to talk about that gap. Not to judge it and not to lecture you about discipline as if it's this like moral virtue that you have simply failed to develop, but to actually examine what is happening in that gap, the gap between what you know you need to do, the gap between what you know you need to do and just doing it. And more importantly, to build something that helps you close it. So welcome to Brewing Success, you guys. My name is Andrea Gebhardt. I'm so excited you're here. I'm your host. And today we are talking about consistency, what it actually is, and what it actually looks like for someone living a full, complicated, beautiful, demanding life, and how to build a framework I call the consistency contract that works with your real life instead of against it. And this episode really is for the entrepreneur who is building at 6 a.m. and again after the kids are asleep. This is for the person who is pursuing a vision while also managing every other responsibility that life didn't pause to accommodate. This is for the person who is not failing, who is in fact doing an extraordinary amount, but who feels the absence of consistency like a pebble in your shoe. Always there, always just enough to interrupt the rhythm. So let's work to take that little pebble out. And let us do that by first beginning with an honest confession. Most of us were handed a definition of consistency that was never really going to work for us in the first place. The definition looks something like this. Consistency means doing the same thing at the same time, with the same intensity, every single day, without interruption, without exception, without mercy. And if you missed a day, you broke the streak, you failed. You were, by that definition, inconsistent. And inconsistency was a character defect rather than a human reality. That definition of consistency doesn't account for the sick kid. It doesn't account for the client emergency or the family obligation or the season of grief or the week where the business demanded everything you had and the vision had to wait. It doesn't account for the fact that you are a human being with a life, not a machine with a program. So the first thing I want to do today is retire that old definition, that exhaustive, burdensome, performative definition. Not because standards don't matter, they absolutely do, but because A definition of consistency that was never designed for your actual life is not a standard, it's a trap. Consistency, properly understood, is not about perfection of frequency. It's actually about fidelity of direction. Let me say that again. Fidelity of direction. Consistency is fidelity of direction. Your commitment to the path, your commitment to the plan, your commitment to the progress that is required to get there, to reach that goal, to bring that vision to life. It really means that over time, over the arc of weeks and months and seasons, your actions are moving you reliably toward the thing that you said matters. Not without interruption. Interruptions are going to happen. Not without the occasional detour or delay. Those things are going to happen. But without abandonment. That's the big difference here. Without the kind of drift that takes you so far off course that you have to start over from the beginning. The person who walks 3 days a week for a year is more consistent and will see more results than the person who runs every day for 3 weeks and then stops. The entrepreneur who publishes content imperfectly but persistently over 12 months will outpace the one who launches with perfection and then disappears. The mentor who shows up reliably and even imperfectly builds more trust than the one who arrives in these brilliant bursts and then goes silent. Consistency is the long game played with steady hands. It's not the absence of interruption. It's the commitment to the return. So here's a distinction that I want to plant firmly in your thinking, because confusing these two concepts is one of the primary reasons people feel that they're failing at consistency when they're actually simply misreading their own progress. Intensity, think of intensity as like a sprint. Consistency is a practice, and our culture, particularly entrepreneurial culture, is deeply in love with intensity. Go farther, go harder. It's like kind of where hustle culture has developed, where we celebrate the all-nighters, the hustle season, the 100-hour work week, the person who went all in and burned everything else down to the ground in pursuit of the goal. And we tell that story as if it's the model, as if it's some badge of honor, as if it's some superpower. But intensity without consistency is a cycle, not a trajectory. You go hard, you exhaust yourself, you recover, you go hard again, and you may cover a great deal of ground in those sprints, but there really is no consistent baseline carrying you forward between them. And what will happen is you'll find yourself, after years of extraordinary effort, standing frustratingly close to the exact same place where you started. Consistency isn't the absence of intensity. Consistency is the structure that makes intensity sustainable. It is the practice that keeps you moving even when the fire is low. And so I say all this, let me be really clear about something. The consistency that you see celebrated on social media, it's a curated highlight. It's the person at the desk at 5 a.m. looking serene and purposeful. It's the gym selfie. It's the revenue screenshot. It's the polished routine presented as if it arrived fully formed and has never once been interrupted by a difficult Tuesday. Real consistency looks different. It looks like opening the laptop, this is me sometimes, at 11 at night when the house is finally quiet, and writing for 40 minutes, even though you planned for 2 hours. It looks like following up with customers in the car between school pickup and client calls. It looks like sending the imperfect email rather than waiting for the perfect one. It looks like choosing. Consistency is choosing again and again and again to show up for the thing in whatever form the showing up can take that day. Real consistency is almost never glamorous or fancy, but it is always cumulative. There's this principle in finance that most of us understand intellectually, but underestimate emotionally. And that's the principle of compound interest, right? Small deposits made consistently over time produce results that are wildly disproportionate to the size of the original deposit. The magic isn't in the size of the contribution. The magic is in the unbroken continuity of it. So your consistency works the exact same way. The 30-minute writing session that felt like it was too small to matter was progress. The one email sent when you planned on sending 10? Still progress. The single conversation with a potential client when you intended to reach out to 20 that day? Still progress. Each of those actions in isolation looks insufficient. But when you compound them over months, they become the body of work. They become the customer list, the revenue, the reputation, the business, the credibility. The danger is that compound growth is invisible at the beginning. You can't see it accumulating. You can't feel it building. And so you stop. Not because it's not working, but because you can't see it yet. And this is the moment where most people quit. And this is the valley between starting and seeing results where consistency is tested the most. It's like those people who go to the gym for 30 days. And at the end of 30 days, if they don't have a six-pack or biceps, they're like, oh, the gym must not work for me. I must be the only person on the planet that working out must not work for. No, that's just one drop in the bucket. We got to go longer than that. We have to put in the time consistently, put in the actions consistently to get the reward, right? So understanding this, I will say, understanding this idea of compound interest is not going to make the valley any easier. We're still going to be tested. It's still going to be frustrating. We're still going to feel like the work that we're doing isn't mattering because we're not seeing the results yet. But it does make it navigable because when you know that the accumulation is happening, even when it's invisible, you stop looking for evidence and you start trusting the process, which is like the most important thing that we need to do. So I want to take a moment here to speak very specifically to you, the person building a business inside of an already full life. You are not building in a vacuum. You're building alongside of your career, your family, your community, your obligations that were all there, that all existed before the dream arrived, and it'll still be there regardless of how the dream is progressing. And the standard advice is terrible. Wake up earlier, sacrifice more, protect the vision at all costs. It was written by and for people whose circumstances may look nothing like yours. The person who wrote that definitely doesn't have 4 teenagers. The person who wrote that doesn't have toddlers. The person who wrote that doesn't have the demanding job or obligations that you may have. Consistency for you doesn't look like a monk's schedule. It looks like a non-negotiable minimum. It looks like deciding, regardless of what this week brings, that you will do this one thing. You will do this one action, this one practice, not the whole vision, not the ideal version, the minimum viable commitment that keeps the thread alive. Why? Because a thread maintained consistently becomes a rope, and a rope can hold weight. So I want to stop here for a moment because everything we've talked about so far, the true definition of consistency, the compound effect, the minimum viable commitment, it all points towards something. And I've watched it happen in real time in real people over and over again in my work as a leader and a mentor. There's a moment that happens when consistency becomes a practice rather than a performance. When it moves from something you're trying to do into who you simply are. It's that moment, that shift. That's what changes everything. Not just your results, your reputation, the way others perceive you, the way you perceive yourself. And I've said this many times, and I mean every word of it, and I hope you take note and jot it down. When your consistency increases, your credibility skyrockets. It's not just some motivational slogan. It's a law. It operates whether you intend it to or not, whether you're watching for it or not, whether you believe it applies to you or not. When you show up consistently for your audience, for your clients, for your team, for your family, to the vision you said you were committed to, guess what? People notice. And they may not say anything. They may not leave a comment or send a message or offer explicit praise, but they do notice. And over time, that noticing, it becomes trust. And trust evolves into credibility. And credibility becomes a foundation upon which everything else in your business and your life is built. You can't buy credibility. You can't manufacture it. You can't fake it with a single brilliant moment. Credibility is built in the accumulation of ordinary moments honored. It's built in the Tuesday when no one was watching and you showed up anyway. It was built in the season when the results were invisible and the work continued regardless. It is built brick by invisible brick. By the practice of doing what you said you would do for longer than most people are willing to do it. That is what consistency builds. And that's why it's not optional. Consistency isn't optional. It's essential. not for the life that you're trying to build and not for the person that you're trying to become. So I want to give you something concrete to walk away with today, not a vague encouragement to be more consistent because that's lame. We both know that that's like not enough. I want to give you a structure, a framework, something you can actually use. So I created something called the consistency contract. And before you imagine some like elaborate, burdensome form, let me tell you exactly what it's not. It is not a complicated productivity system. It is not another app or tracker or color-coded calendar. However, I do love making those things. It is a commitment you make to yourself, specific, honest, designed for the life that you're actually living, not the ideal life that you might have someday, right, when things slow down. And just, spoiler alert, things never slow down. We build consistency inside of our full lives, or we don't build it at all. So the consistency contract is made up of 4 clauses. Each one addresses a specific place where consistency typically breaks down. They create a structure that is both flexible and enough to survive your life and sturdy enough to protect and produce real results. So I'm going to walk you through each of these clauses, and you're going to probably be able to self-identify where consistency breaks down for you, but now you're going to have a plan and a way to work through that. So clause 1, the first thing we got to do in this consistency contract is we have to define our non-negotiable. Now, if you work with me, if you're on our team, if I lead or mentor you, you're familiar with this conversation because I talk about it all the time. What is your non-negotiable? Every contract begins with a commitment. Yours begins right here. What is the one action, the single specific practice that, if performed consistently, would move your vision forward more than anything else? Not a list of 10 things, not a comprehensive routine. What is one thing? The thing that, if you're honest, you probably already know is the keystone of your progress. So what is that non-negotiable for you? The discipline here is not in the doing, it's in the choosing. And I love this. I love choice. I love the agency of choice. I love the autonomy of choice. I actually was listening to a podcast the other night, and John Maxwell, who you guys know is my mentor and friend, I heard him say on there, actually got up out of bed and wrote it down. But he said, you're never going to get what you want in life, but you're always going to get what you choose. You're never going to get what you want in life, but you're always going to get what you choose. And I was just like, oh my gosh, that's so great. That is so great. That is so great. You're never going to get what you want. You're always going to get what you choose. And it brings back our power, and it awakens our minds, and it reminds us of the control that we actually have and puts us back in the driver's seat. And I love that. So, because when we try to be consistent about everything, we become consistent with nothing, right? So the consistency contract asks you to make a decision. This one practice is protected. It is non-negotiable, meaning no matter what, it happens. No matter what, it happens. Just like I'm pretty sure brushing your teeth every day is a non-negotiable. No matter what, it happens. And I hope I am accurate in that information. So this one commitment is honored before the week negotiates with you. Everything else is flexible. This is not. What is that one action? Define your non-negotiable. Write it down. Name it specifically. And you can't keep it vague, by the way, right? Not work on my business. That's not a commitment. That's a category. So the commitment would be publish 1 piece of content per week. Send 5 outreach messages per day. Spend 30 minutes on revenue-generating activity every morning. You want to be specific. You want it to be measurable, and you want it to be yours because it is something you have to fit into your life. Clause number 2 is an interesting concept you might not have ever heard before, but I think it's really going to help you kind of, hone in on what this looks like for you. And you're probably going to notice a little bit of oh man, this is kind of where my stuff breaks down because I lack clarity here. So clause number 2 is set the floor, not the ceiling. And this clause is perhaps the most liberating reframe in the entire framework. Most people set their consistency goal So like, I'm going to reach out to 10 people every single day, or I'm going to call X amount of clients, or I'm going to write a chapter. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. I'm going to walk 3 miles every single day, right? So they set their consistency goal at their best day capacity. That person who, like the person or the version of you that is happy, fed, rested, excited, motivated, inspired, like the highest version of yourself, at the level they could achieve it if everything went perfectly. If they had full energy, full time, zero interruption. And then we feel like failures every time life delivers anything less than perfect conditions. P.S. This is me all the time. This is me all the time. This is my breakdown, because my Sunday night self that is looking forward to the week and excited and getting things ready and in planning mode and like reset mode, she is audacious. That version of me, she is audacious and crazy and like highly motivated and incredibly inspired. And she commits to things that the Wednesday version of myself is way too overwhelmed to take on. So your consistency contract asks you, instead of what can you do when you're feeling your best and everything's amazing and perfect days and no interruptions, no setbacks, no adversity, no hardships, and instead asks you to set the floor. What is the minimum version of your non-negotiable that you can honor on your worst day, when you have a migraine, when your kids are homesick, when the pipe under the sink broke and now you can't use the kitchen sink? When? What is the minimum version of your non-negotiable that you can honor even on your worst day? On the day the kids are sick again, the client's in crisis, your energy is low, the motivation has left, all motivation has left the building. What is the smallest action that keeps the commitment alive? Because here's the truth. A floor maintained is infinitely more valuable than a ceiling reached twice and then abandoned. Cool, you reached out to 10 people today. Neat. If you can't do it every day, no matter what, it's not sustainable. If you can't do it every day forever, it's not sustainable. And we have to be more realistic with ourselves. And that's why I love the set the floor, not the ceiling clause in the contract. The floor is what keeps the thread alive when life is pulling at everything else. And a thread, as I said before, maintained consistently, guess what? It becomes a rope, and a rope can hold weight. So set your ceiling, the ideal version of your practice on a great day, then set your floor, the minimum viable version that counts as showing up. So on a great day, I am reaching out to 5 people about my products or my business. On a great day, that's reasonable for me. On my worst day, I'm reaching out to 1. That is my minimum non-negotiable, no matter what that is happening. On good days, when you're having those good days, reach for the ceiling. And on the hard days, just honor the floor. And on every day, resist the temptation to call it a failure because it wasn't the ceiling. The floor isn't failure. The floor is fidelity. So now we move into clause number 3. And this is a big one too, because I feel like this is where most people get stuck. Clause number 3, build the return ritual. So every person who has ever built genuine consistency has, at some point, been inconsistent. Gasp. Oh my gosh, what? Yes. Every successful person you see, every leader you admire, every entrepreneur you're in awe of, they have all been inconsistent. This is not an exception to the story. It's part of the story. The question is never whether you're going to miss a day or a week or a season. The question is what you do in the aftermath of the miss. Who are you when you fall off the wagon? You roll down the side of the mountain and tumble into the ravine and end up in the creek and flow down the river all away from your dream? Or do you fall off the wagon, dust yourself off, get back up and get back on it again? What is your return ritual? Most people treat a break in consistency as evidence of who they are. They missed 3 days in a row, and now the story suddenly becomes, I'm not a consistent person. I can't maintain discipline. I suck. I'm not good at this. I always do this. And that story That narrative about identity becomes more paralyzing than the original eruption ever was. So you skipped a day. So you ate the cookie. So you didn't go running. So you didn't reach out. So you didn't do this. So what? So what? So what? Who cares? Move on. So what? Who cares? Take the next best action. Your consistency contract includes a return ritual, which is a predetermined, zero drama process for coming back after an interruption. It's not a punishment. It's not a recommitment ceremony with grand declarations. It's simply the decision made in advance that when you miss, not if, when, you will return without self-flagellation, without lengthy processing, without waiting until Monday or the first of the month or the new year. You're simply going to return today in the next available moment. As if the interruption was weather, just something that happened, something you waited out, something you're now on the other side of, because that's all it was. Those interruptions, they're just weather. They're not your character. They're not your destiny. It's not your identity, just weather. Clause number 4, we want to make consistency visible. So the final clause of your consistency contract addresses a biological reality. Human beings are wired to seek evidence of progress. So when we can't see our progress, our motivation naturally erodes, not because we're weak, but because we're human. The compound growth of consistency is, as we've already discussed, largely invisible in its early stages. And invisible progress feels indistinguishable from zero progress, right? So your contract actually is going to ask you to make your consistency visible through some form of tracking, not for the purpose of performance, but for the purpose of proof. A simple calendar where you can mark each day that you honored your non-negotiable. A journal where you note what you did and how it felt. Maybe it's a trusted person who's witnessing your commitment alongside of you. An activity tracker that visibly shows your consistency over the week. Whatever form it takes, the practice of making consistency visible gives your brain the evidence it needs to stay motivated through the valley where the results maybe aren't showing up yet. There's also a secondary benefit here. Visible consistency becomes a source of identity. So when you can look at a calendar and see 30 days of honoring your commitment, 30 days of walking, 30 days of drinking water, 30 days of not eating processed food, 30 days of reaching out to clients, 30 days of social media posting, 30 days of writing, content creation, whatever it is, even imperfectly, even at the floor level, you stop thinking of yourself as someone who struggles with consistency and you start beginning to think of yourself as someone who shows up. And that identity shift, it's not cosmetic, it's foundational because we behave in accordance with who we believe we are. And when you believe you're someone who shows up, you start showing up. And I want to address something directly here before we close because I know it is in the room with us right now. You may be someone who has been consistent, genuinely, like effortlessly consistent, and maybe the results that you've been expecting haven't arrived yet at the scale that you've expected. And that disconnect is discouraging in a way that is difficult to articulate because it carries with it the particular loneliness of doing the right thing and not yet kind of being rewarded for it, So I want to say something to you with as much clarity and conviction as I can bring to it, and it is this. Your results are coming. They're not lost. They're not being withheld. They are accumulating in ways you just can't see yet. In relationships that are being built, in trust that is being established, in skills that are being sharpened, in reputation being quietly constructed in the minds of people who are watching without telling you they're watching. Progress is not always linear. In fact, it rarely is. Progress often looks flat for a really long time and then changes dramatically in a very short window. That window, that sudden acceleration, it's not luck. It's not overnight success. It's the compound interest of everything you did during the flat season finally becoming visible. The work you did when you couldn't see it working is the work that makes the breakthrough possible. The work you did when you could not see it working is the work that makes the breakthrough possible. This is the connection between consistency and progress that most people miss. Progress is the outcome. Consistency is the engine. And engines don't always announce their work. They just run. They're just running in the background, right? They simply turn. And one day the vehicle arrives at the destination and people marvel at the journey without understanding that the journey was made possible not by a single dramatic moment, but by an engine that kept running when there's no applause for running. Consistency is blind to the input. It is blind to the inputs. Whatever you consistently put in, you're going to consistently get out in every area and aspect of your life. Again, another law. Whether you want it to or not, it is operating in real time all around you. So we got to keep the engine running. The destination is real. The work is working. And the version of you who arrives there, shaped by the discipline and the return rituals and the floor holding and the invisible accumulation, that version of you will be equal to everything the destination requires. So in these last few moments, I want to walk you through the beginning of your own consistency contract. 4 questions, 1 with each clause. This is going to help you create your consistency contract. I want you to write these down. Don't just type them, write them. There's something, as you know, guys, educator here, in the act of handwriting a commitment that makes it more real, more personal, and more yours. So for clause 1, we have to figure out what your non-negotiable is. So what is the single practice that, if honored consistently over the next 90 days, would move your vision forward more than anything else you could choose? Name it specifically. Not a category, a commitment. Clause 2, we got to identify your floor. So what is the minimum viable version of that practice? So if your practice is to, reach out to 5 people or spend 30 minutes reaching out to people every single day, what is the minimum viable version of that? Is it at least 1? Is it at least 2? Is it at least 3? What is the minimum, the non-negotiable bare minimum? The version that you can honor on your hardest, most interrupted, most depleted day. What does showing up look like when showing up fully is not available to you? Clause number 3, we have to decide what your return ritual is going to be. So when you inevitably miss a day of doing the things, not if, but when, what will you tell yourself? And what will you do? Cry, sulk, spiral, binge out on some Ben and Jerry's and Netflix? Or are you going to get up, find the next available moment when you can get back on the bus, get back on the wagon, get back into action? I want you to write down your return ritual now before you need it so that when the interruption comes, when the day goes awry, when things happen outside of your control that completely take over, when those things come, you're not sitting there making decisions from discouragement. That's why you'll always hear people say, never quit on a bad day, never quit on an emotional day, never quit on a hard day, because we make decisions based on our emotions, not based on truth, not based on reality. And we're going to have hard days, and we're going to have crappy days, and we're going to have trying moments. So what's your return ritual? This way you're executing on a plan you already made. Well, when this happens, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to give myself the rest of the day, and the next day, boom, I'm right back on it. Clause number 4, we have to create your visibility system. So how are you going to make your consistency visible? A calendar, a journal, accountability partner, a weekly check-in with yourself. What is the method that's going to give you evidence of your own progress so that the invisible accumulation has somewhere to land? The 4 answers that you come up with here are your consistency contract. Sign it, honor it, send me a screenshot of it. And when you need to, return to it. Above all else today, I want you to hear me when I say this. You are not someone who lacks discipline. You're not someone who is constitutionally incapable of consistency. You are someone, though, who has been trying to build a consistent practice inside of a full, complex, demanding life, often without a framework designed for that reality, and often without permission to count the imperfect version as enough. Often without anyone acknowledging how much you're already carrying while still reaching for more. That reaching, you being here, you still wanting to learn and grow and make improvements to get better, that matters. The refusal to settle, guess what? It matters. The fact that you are here in this conversation with me, still asking how to build better, that's not the behavior of someone who lacks discipline. That's the behavior of someone who is deeply committed and simply needed a better structure to hold that commitment. Now you have one. You have your very own consistency contract. It's not a magic formula, and it's not going to make the work any easier. And it's not going to eliminate the hard days or the interruptions or the seasons when the results feel very far away. What it will do, however, is give you a way to show up inside and in spite of all of that, imperfectly, persistently, faithfully, for long enough that the compound effect of your showing up eventually becomes inevitable, undeniable. And when that happens, when your consistency becomes a practice rather than a performance, when it becomes a part of who you are, rather than, something you're trying to do, remember this. When your consistency increases, your credibility skyrockets. Again, it's not just a quote, it's a promise. One that your consistency honored over time will make good on. I guarantee it. So thank you for being here with me. Thank you for the work that you're doing and for the life that you're building. I want you to share this episode with someone who needs to hear it, because you almost certainly know someone who is probably sitting in the gap of what they know they need to do and just doing it. And this conversation might be exactly what helps them cross it. So again, thank you for being here with me on Brewing Success, where growth is the mission, change is the reward, and progress is the goal.